Hello and thanks for checking out ChartGuys.com. We're proud to be one of the most successful technical analysis communities online, teaching you the skills to become a more confident, effective, and informed trader. Join our community of hundreds of analysts worldwide working together to learn the charts, generate profit, and achieve financial independence. For access to daily live chart analysis and market coverage, a thriving chat community, along with dozens of hours of exclusive educational materials. We look forward to seeing you. Let's check out some charts. Hey everyone, checking in on the Canadian MJ sector. We'll look at MJ, the ETF, WEED, APH, ACB, and CRON. We'll start on the weekly time frame and zoom in to get a broad picture and then get the details. So starting off on the weekly time frame, we have MJ forming a weekly inside bar, and that just obviously the week is closed. So we're looking at support of 28.11 and resistance of 29 to see if the bulls, ideally the goal for the bulls is to change this trend on the weekly, and to do so we need our low, the high of the bounce. Get my magnet going. High of the bounce, there's our higher low, and the bulls need to break the most recent lower high in order to change this trend. So the key resistance for me is 30.37 to see if the bulls are going to be able to shift this momentum. If they could, we would see a bullish MACD cross along with it. So bulls closing strong at the end of the week, and they want that to carry over, obviously, into next week as well. The daily time frame, a couple days in a row, seeing a slight uptrend, and I say slight just because compared to the downside we haven't really made much of a dent in a recovery. But with our tightening pattern, we will be looking for the potential of an equilibrium, which would mean a lower high here forming somewhere compared to that 30.37 level, and some continued tightening range which could last a couple weeks. So if we don't get volume that's going to be indicative of a break of a tightening range, we will continue to tighten. And you can see the volume has just been dropping off and been pretty low over the past week and a half. So MJ is in a tightening pattern, as is WEED. Look at the weekly chart, and this weekly equilibrium has been playing out ever since the all-time high, low of the pullback, lower high, higher low, another lower high, and another higher low. So we're getting real tight here, and a break is going to happen sometime in the next 2 weeks, in my opinion. The bulls have favor. They're closer to a bull break than a bear break. A bear break would be $27 for me, and a bull break is $31.46. After $31.46 is $34.71, and then a lack of resistance. The bulls would love to break these lower highs. We'll be closing in on a bull MACD cross if that is the case, and it would just shift sentiment in the entire sector a bit more bullish, in my opinion. So that's what we're watching. You can see on the daily time frame it gets real tight, and people, let's get rid of these lines, but people do trend lines a lot, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't like them to act on. I like price levels, again, because everybody's trend lines look slightly different, and where's the signal? You know, if I put a trend line here, we already broke bullish, or if I'm using wicks, then it's going to be a different trend line. So as long as I can visually look at this and say, okay, we have a tightening range, and I can visually see where trend lines would go to form this tightening range, then all I need to look is the price levels, and that's all that I'm going to be acting on. So the key resistance, 31.46. First there's 30.70, but it's 31.46 for me would be a shift, and that would be a potential indication to get into long-term positions again. And then you would obviously want to protect the trade. If we were to fall back and break some support levels, you'd want to stop out and reassess the situation, because that would not be the follow-through that we would be looking for. But this is signal number one. Breaking that level would be signal number one of the longer-term pattern going back to the bulls, and the potential of the weekly chart going back towards all-time highs over the next year, or however long we have until the leg. Well, actually, no, we're looking into the fall, so we're looking into the next 4 or 5 months. So checking in on APH, it is much weaker than WEED, and we closed at the low of the week compared to the high of the week, so clearly a big difference there. But it's just continuous lower highs and lower lows, and the bulls are attempting this higher low, but they're not giving any convincing sign that it's forming yet. So on both MJ and WEED, it was convincing that we had, okay, our base is now built, our higher low, bulls are trying to make their way back up again. Not the case for APH. So support is 963, and a break of 890 would be just another lower high, lower low. We're in a lot more bearish mode here, I should say, on this pullback than we are on WEED. So we've known that for a while. It's been very apparent ever since earnings really sucked the wind back out of the bulls' sails and the bears took back over. It's a long battle for these bulls to turn things around, and there are more bullish names out there with more opportunity, which is why traders are going to those names. You know, if you're an investor, you're kind of having to sit through this, and while there's no huge red flags because the weekly trend is still bullish long term, it's definitely a huge pullback from that all-time high. We've given back 60% at this point. So the daily time frame for the bulls to turn things around, step number 1 is breaking 1020, but in terms of the long-term pattern, it's all the way up at that 1266 level. That's the last lower high on the weekly. So we are a long way away, 30% away or so from even just breaking the first lower high on the weekly time frame. So bears are going to be in control of APH for the foreseeable future. Even if WEED breaks bullish, that might have an impact on APH, but it won't be enough to give it a break alone. ACB, so we've got our support level, lower high, and there's that higher low. So support is 756 followed by 675, and resistance, the level to break, is 919. So even here, the bulls need about 12-13% or so to break resistance and see that follow through, whereas WEED, where it stands, it needs about 3 or 4% to break resistance. So if I had to rank them, it's in terms of strength, WEED, ACB, APH, and Cron is last, as Cron is still feeling the hangover from its earnings reaction. We'll look at that in just a moment. So daily chart, again, pretty weak bounce compared to where we pulled back from, but the bulls are still attempting to see some follow through, and if we get that WEED bull break, we'll be looking for ACB to be the number 2 laggard to follow along. So one thing I want to point out is with a lot of rumors, there are rumors going around with buyouts and mergers and things like that. They sometimes will get priced in temporarily to the stock, but it's not really the kind of thing that I want to be acting on as a trader. I want to be aware of what people are talking about and things like that. But just the instance where we had a halt and everybody's getting all excited, and then the halt comes out just for them to dispel the rumors. It takes our focus out of the game, in my opinion, if we're trying to trade based on rumors and things like that, rather than just letting the chart guide us and to play the strongest names bullish and to keep signs and eyes out for the weaker names to turn bullish, but patiently waiting. So Cron, very bearish reaction to the earnings, and really it was a delayed reaction. So it's almost like that article and everything that came out afterwards was the real cause of the pullback. But we're still tightening up in the weekly, and the weekly is still more favorable than APH and ACB where we currently stand, because we do have this support level to be going off of. And actually, I take that back. It's now about on par with where ACB is, but we have our low, high of the bounce, and now trying to form this higher low, 657, and we're looking to form a higher low compared to that. We're currently at 739, the low. So need more convincing turnaround, but we're just in a free fall right now and looking for a new support level. After a weak bounce, this is a potential bear flag on the daily time frame, close at the low of the day. So the Cron bear is definitely back in control, and it's just that support level we're looking at. But this is a potential bottom fishing play where the daily RSI is getting close to oversold, the 4-hour RSI down in the oversold range. Historically, it bounces from 20. So if we were to drop down to a 4-hour 20 RSI and get down to about the low $7 range, we have a stop level to be using at 657, but that 4-hour RSI does have a historical bounce level to be watching in the 20 range. That's when I would be looking to potentially start scaling in for an oversold bounce. And no one else is really that weak on the 4-hour time frame. APH would be next, and another leg down, it will get oversold there as well. But you can see it dips down to 20. Pretty much both in crypto and MJ, 4-hour RSI at 20 is we're going to bounce soon, and that's a very reliable indicator just in terms of historical playing out and continuation of it playing out time and time again. So that's something to keep an eye on in this space when things get ugly. So I appreciate you watching. I'm going to put out a US MJ video as well, and a little bit of a lull in the action. Things appear to be heating up, but not too much just yet. Things aren't going crazy. And we're just patiently waiting on both the S&P 500, which is still in a tightening pattern, as well as WEED. And we should get that break on WEED first, like I said, sometime in the next 2 weeks, most likely. So thanks again. Have a good weekend.